Hey guys, Kevin Dillon here with Kevin Duffy. We had some issues with the first video, so we're here on the second video as we're talking the regular season ahead of the Patriots' first playoff game against the Tennessee Titans. We're taking a look back before our perceptions change on what were some of the best moments, best players, just the highlights of the 2017 regular season for the New England Patriots. And we'll start. The easy one is Tom Brady's the MVP because, I mean, he could be the MVP of the league.
Yeah, probably. I'd like to make a... So Kevin did a pretty long list of giving out his awards, and you obviously remember everyone you picked. I'll try to, off the top of my head, give another opinion. Tom Brady, tough to argue against him as team MVP. Didn't finish the season statistically very strong. He had a few games where it's just, maybe a combination of the elements. I mean, the playing in the 1 degree weather against the Jets certainly doesn't help, but didn't finish the strongest, but still 32 TDs, 8 picks, threw for a ton of yards. Probably going to win NFL MVP. I think he should win NFL MVP. So I'm on board with that one. So
Tom Brady is the MVP, non-Brady MVP category here.
Non-Brady.
I chose Rob Gronkowski. Do you have a disagreement with that? Or?
No, that's who I would choose too.
Yeah.
And I think that's his value to the team was so apparent when they played without him in that Miami game, and the offense just was a complete train wreck without him. They really need him. I think he had a phenomenal year. He stayed healthy. He missed 1 game due to injury, which is for him really good. They're going to need him in the playoffs, and I think, just look at that Pittsburgh game. The Pittsburgh game, to me, we'll see how the season shakes out, but the fact that they're playing at Gillette and they don't have to go on the road for the playoffs makes all the difference in the world. And he dominated that final drive against Pittsburgh. Him versus Sean Davis, it was a joke. And that was the most important drive of the season. And I think he accounted for every single yard in the passing game, 69 yards on that drive. And then Dion Lewis finished it off. And then he had the 2-point conversion too. So just excellent year for Gronk. Absolutely deserves to be the first team All-Pro tight end.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it would be interesting as we go into our offensive. I went with an offensive player of the year, so in that I took out Brady because I like to not do quarterbacks for that kind of category, and I ended up actually choosing Dion Lewis mostly just to give him some credit. In a world where Gronk is also on the team, he's probably your offensive MVP. But Dion Lewis. If he'd ended up starting from the beginning of the season, his numbers could have been absurd. I mean, he ended up with, I think, 10 total touchdowns, over 1,000 all-purpose yards. I mean, great season for Dion Lewis.
Can't argue. See, this isn't going well because I can't argue with you on any of these. I guess you could, in theory, make a case that Lewis could be the non-Brady MVP. Terrific season. He only running back in the NFL who carried more than 150 times and averaged 5 yards per rushing attempt. So that stat alone tells you just how efficient he was, how productive he was. And as Kevin said, if they don't yank him around at the beginning of the season, if he's the #1 running back to start the year, he's finishing with upwards of 1,100 yards rushing, averaging 5 yards a carry, probably 12 touchdowns. I mean, that would put him on par with some of the best backs in the NFL, just probably a step below what Todd Gurley did this year. Even Kamara had probably a statistically better season, but that would put him up there with almost anybody.
Definitely, yeah. So now just moving to the other side of the ball, defensive MVP. I'm not even going to tell you who I chose first. Who would you say is the Patriots' defensive MVP?
It's probably, I'll say Devin McCourty.
That's what I chose. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a harder pick than I think the offense, because Gronk is pretty obvious. Even Dion, you also have the statistics to rely on offensively. You're not choosing Devin McCourty because of stats. It's a variety of reasons. Early in the season, weeks 1 through 4, that was the secondary that got torched and gave up a lot of big plays in the passing game. The rest of the year, they were awesome. They cracked every once in a while against Miami in that Week 14 loss. They did give up some big plays in the passing game, but they pretty much limited those long gains, and McCourty has a lot to do with that. He played, at least in the middle of the season, he played a little bit different of a role. When they would play Harmon as the deep safety, they would drop him in almost in a what they call a robber position, where he's basically playing in the middle of the field and kind of reading the quarterback from there. So his versatility, his leadership, his toughness, I agree with you there.
Yeah, and it was interesting because some of the other guys I was thinking about, like who would be your standard Patriots defensive MVP? Well, you got Dante Hightower got hurt. Mm-hmm. Trey Flowers spent some time hurt, and then didn't end up being. He didn't have the sack numbers that maybe you would want from a defensive end. He had a really good season. I think sure. Maybe the numbers don't necessarily represent how good he was, but just you look at defensive end, you think sacks. That's maybe not the number that you'd want. Kyle Van Noy had a great season at middle linebacker, but he too got hurt toward the end of the season. So there were a lot of good players that didn't end up actually getting, like, they didn't finish the full season. Yeah. Malcolm Butler got burned a bunch of times. Yeah. Stephon Gilmore had the rough start to the season. So it almost ends up being McCourty by default. It was like the Patriots had certain players have good games sometimes and then some worse games other times. And so it made a complicated decision.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, you wouldn't pick Butler or Gilmore.
Right.
I think Gilmore, after his start, I think Gilmore played pretty well, but you have to consider he did play terribly in the first 4 games. Then he missed 3 games with a concussion, so he really only gave you something for the second half of the year. He was pretty good at that time, but that's not enough to be named the defensive MVP of the team.
Definitely, yeah. So just moving forward, some of the other categories out here, we won't go through them all, but I wanted to go through best play. What do you think was the best play for the Patriots
Best
this year?
Play. So are you defining this as like the most impressive physical play or the most important play to the season? I
had the most impressive play, and then I also had the most important play, because the most important play is the Daron Harmon pick on the goal line.
Okay, yeah, that one's in our. You can't dispute that. There's no dispute to that. Okay. So best play, I'm going to define as the most impressive.
Yeah.
I guess. I will say, man. I mean, Gronk's one-handed TD catch. What game was that? Buffalo or
I think it was Buffalo. Yeah.
Gronk's one-handed TD catch here at Gillette was absolutely ridiculous. That sticks out in my mind as one of the most impressive plays. What did you pick?
I picked when they beat the Texans. It was the final drive, the final seconds. There was like 22 seconds left on the clock, and Brady hit Cooks in the front of the end zone. It was like he had to tap both toes down, make the catch. It was an absolute dart of a pass right there. Yeah. Just in crunch time. I mean, obviously, it was most impressive. I mean, it was a ridiculous play by Gronk, but I mean, just the moment combined with the skill level required to make that play, that was one I ended up going with. But obviously, there's a lot of good choices. I mean, there's how many Dion Lewis plays could you pick as the most impressive play this year when he's just dodging linebackers over and over again?
Yeah, so many times you watch him and you're just like, oh, yeah, how is he doing that?
Yeah.
I would name a bunch more, too. I think that yours is kind of a blend of most impressive / most important because that was a crucial game-winning play. Mm-hmm. I would throw in the I'm blanking suddenly. Why am I just had
you had the Gronk one, and then there was a Dion Lewis 109-yard kick return for a touchdown. It was pretty good.
That was a big one.
Trying to think of what else that was in there. There was a lot of them. Well, we can come back to it. We can move on to
sorry.
Worst.
Sorry, guys.
We can move on to worst play. Worst play. I know you enjoyed mine. I chose the.
Yours was epic.
The Fozzie Whitaker screen pass where they. So Gilmore and McCourty got crossed up on who was supposed to be covering Christian McCaffrey. Mm-hmm. They sent McCaffrey to the other side of the formation. Everyone ran to the right side of the field. Meanwhile, they had Ed Dixon out blocking, and they had Fozzie Whitaker in for a screen pass. They hit Whitaker, I think it was like a 40-yard screen pass touchdown, but they could have passed to Ed Dixon, who was also wide open down the field. No one was near him for a touchdown. So
Newton probably could have just run.
Yeah.
There was no one on the left side of the field. Every single defender was like inside the hash marks, or like the right hash mark, or, well, the defensive left, but yeah, offensive right. That was just an unbelievably terrible defensive play, and I would not have thought of that one. That was good memory by you. Worst play, I did remember my best play, by the way. Also, I'll go
do that.
Best play first. The one that I would say maybe would be the Brady to Cooks 42-yard completion against the Jets in Week 6 at the end of the first half. Because that was a pretty big turn of events there. They're down 14-7. McCown picked off by Butler inside of a minute. Then Brady hits Cooks for like a perfect throw and catch down the left sideline. That sets up a TD to tie it at halftime. So I thought that was at a point in the year where they're still somewhat figuring themselves out. Like, that was Week 6. And it was the Jets, but that was a game, like, if they lost, I mean, I don't know where that's their third loss of the year in 6 weeks. So they'd be sitting there at 3-3. I don't know where the season goes from there. So I felt that was a pretty big play. And then worst play, probably one of the plays that preceded the Duron Harmon interception, the Juju Smith-Schuster 69-yard. In that situation, to allow him to not only get to the sideline, but just continue along the sideline. Basically what happened...
Did Jordan Richards end up taking
Jordan Richards was kind of engaged with a blocker and with a receiver downfield, and he got relatively to the right spot where it's maybe kind of slipped as he was lunging toward Smith-Schuster, and he actually hit into Devin McCourty, who was also trying to knock Smith-Schuster out of bounds. So Richards wiped out McCourty. Schuster, it looks certain that he's going to go out of bounds, just tiptoes the sidelines and is able to bring the ball down to like the 10-yard line. And that was just a disaster at that point in the game. Obviously, as you said, the best play or most important play of the season would follow about 2 or 3 snaps later. But that one was, whew. The Pittsburgh game was full of, well, you could just do a whole list of superlatives with that Week 15 Pittsburgh game.
Right. I mean, my next one was going to be weirdest game because I ended up having to pick for that. I didn't choose the Steelers game for that, but that could be up there. What would you say was the weirdest game of the year?
Weirdest game. Wow. I felt like I kept saying a lot of the games were pretty
Every
weird.
game you said the game was weird. So.
I know. I'm just pretty dramatic, too. What do you think? I'll think for a second. What was yours?
I ended up having the Falcons game, Week 7, where it was supposed to be an offensive juggernaut coming in, and then the Patriots went up big early, and then there was all the fog came in. No one could see anything from that game. It was supposed to be this big Super Bowl rematch, and it ended up the story was the fog because it was you couldn't see anything. So that was a weird one for me. There was also that Week 6 Jets game where the Safarian Jenkins fumble ended up costing the Jets a chance to beat the Patriots.
Oh yeah,
that one was pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of everything else. Every game was at least a little weird this year. I mean, the Chargers. I had my most hilarious play was Travis Benjamin running the ball back into his own end zone.
Oh yeah.
That was one of my highlights of the year. That was one of the best plays all year was Travis Benjamin running back into his own end zone for the safety.
That was one of the worst plays in the NFL this season. I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah.
That was a terrible play. Changed the game a lot, too. I mean, that was 7-7 at that point. Pats go up 9-7, get the ball back. They kick a field goal 12-7. Chargers hadn't had the ball in a long time because of that. So, what game was pretty weird was the Texans game. Even the Panthers game, like those games were, the Texans game was crazy because it was before people knew that Deshaun Watson was really good, and they had so many opportunities to sack him, and it wasn't like they were doing anything schematically wrong. They just physically couldn't tackle Deshaun Watson in the backfield, and he had a few, Deontay Foreman had a couple 35-yard catches because Watson extended the play. There was one where he scrambled to his left and evaded a tackler and then threw the ball across the field to the right, like the biggest no-no, and like you're never supposed to do that, but he had the arm to get it there, and Ryan Griffin was wide open. So there were just so many broken plays like that. It was almost like, backyard football to an extent, and then as you said before, like the Pats were able to win it because of the Brady to Cook's TD at the very end in the last minute of the game. So that was one that I think I left, and I was just like, this is a bizarre season so far. This is Week 3, and they've already had just like we haven't mentioned the Chiefs game in the opener. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, every game had some sort of fun story. It was a great season to cover. We'll wrap things up with one last one. I had the biggest storyline that you probably forgot about this year. Which I mean, I talked about mine earlier, but do you have any other one besides Martellus Bennett?
Well, that's definitely the answer.
Definitely the answer.
Do I have another big storyline?
My other one that I came up with just a second ago was Rob Gronkowski actually got hurt for a game this year. And it's usually you think of Gronk getting hurt and it's kind of this mass panic. Gronk just last second out of nowhere had an injury, missed the game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and everyone was kind of wondering what was going on there. Mm-hmm. And then it turns out like next week he was totally fine. Like I don't think he ended up missing many practices.
Yeah, it just seems like they were pretty cautious with him early in the season. They knew when Edelman went down that they probably just didn't have enough to overcome injuries to Edelman and Gronkowski. So it was imperative that he remain healthy, and a lot of that's luck. I mean, you can only take so many precautions, but they were able to get him to the playoffs at close to 100%, it seems. So that's definitely a win in the Patriots book.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we'll probably wrap things up there. We'll do some more coverage, more Titans-focused coverage tomorrow and Thursday. But for now, we just wanted to take a look back on the regular season. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Make sure you tune into all of our coverage at MassLive.com/Patriots. And read Kevin Duffy's feature on, what was his name? Sean Harrington.
Yeah.
He was a great feature about a guy that... I know Scott Zolak just on 98.5 called him. He said he could be better than Ernie Adams, which I thought was which was pretty ridiculous. But
he said that.
Yeah, he said that.
Man.
But we'll see how that goes. But thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Thanks.